Going. Anybody else can catch up. Most of you, I think I probably only know one. My name's Jonathan James. I'm the project manager for O365. Just as I was saying before, I'm reasonably new to Griffith world. I started last October, I put my hand up now. I know very little about Griffith, and so therefore I'm hoping that through feedback and so forth at these kind of events we can learn more. I'm certainly not saying for any reason I'm all-knowing, or so I'm looking for feedback, certainly around any areas that is directly relating to yourselves and how you guys work with the likes of Google Apps and so forth. Right? So asking a question or stating things is certainly one of the things we're looking for. We want to know all of the little secret things that we don't know before we go live so that they don't stop working. So obviously we're here to talk about the move to Office 365. And we'll start with why Office 365, or O365 as it's shortened. We'll talk about the time frame. We'll talk about what's actually changing and when. We'll talk about some of the things we're doing to engage, and we'll look at some of the products and show some examples and so forth if we get as much time as I hope we do. Obviously, we've got an hour. I'm going to push through as much as possible. First, can I ask anybody with mobile phones to put them on silent? Only my phone's allowed to ring during the presentation, which happened the other day after I embarrassingly asked everybody else to turn it off. Can I also ask that you hold questions until we get to the end of the sections, and I'll ask for questions. It just means it'll actually go through smoother, and it'll also mean that you get the chance to get your answers before you ask the questions, because we've done a number of these and I try and fill in all the questions that I've already been asked. But certainly if there's a point you want to make or something that you think I might not know, throw your hand up. I'll get someone to throw you a microphone. There's a cat box, which is one of the new Griffith little initiatives, so that we can get all the questions recorded and so forth through lecture capture. Right, so the first question, which is the most common question, is why are we going to Office 365, and why isn't it being done in the same way that others have been done, like the Lotus Notes to Google and so forth. So, primary reason we're going to Office 365, it is a foundation component towards moving towards the delivery of a new agreement between Griffith and Microsoft. Last July, the VC, Deborah Henley, and a whole bunch of executives signed an agreement with Microsoft. It's a memorandum of understanding which goes for approximately 10 years as a starting point. It is around much broader deliveries than technology, and so basically there are a whole lot of functions currently happening that need to occur before we can start delivering on some of those agreements and so forth, and we'll talk about those. They are based on 3 pillars. The agreement itself, and I won't go through in detail what each deliverable is underneath the pillars, but if anybody is interested, let us know. We have a 10-page presentation from Microsoft and Griffith, or you can call and talk to Ian Smith, who's the Executive Officer of ODS, and he was part of getting the agreement signed and so forth. It is the first of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere, the agreement that we have with Microsoft. And there, I think, are only 4 or 5 universities in the Northern Hemisphere that have the same agreement. So the deliverables are predominantly around academic success, institutional transformation, and research and collaboration. Right? There are a number of items under each of those. They want to set up teaching academies. They want to work towards better technology in education. a whole raft of stuff, as you can see. There's a new Youth Spark program they want to introduce for students in the academic success. We get to play with new AI and cognitive technologies that they're developing and so forth in the institutional transformation. And there are a number of research collaborations planned, including the use of high-performance computing for some of our researchers and so forth as we go forward. So there's quite a bit. So it's important to note that the Office 365 migration is purely a foundation piece, along with a number of other initiatives. There are currently 30 plus initiatives at the moment going across the university to mean that we can meet and deliver on this agreement that we have with Microsoft. Any questions about the MOU? Because that's about as far as I go into it. If you do want more information, just say email us, we'll get the slide pack out. Right, Office 365. So, as I was saying before, for any who was here during the Lotus Notes to Google or Gmail migration, it was a big project that was, we came out and I'm told that we did a lot of business requirements trying to work out what the best product set was, how you did your business and so forth in the email world. Obviously now we're saying, well, we have Google, we now have to move to Office 365 as a foundation piece. You know, the product sets are reasonably similar in what they can deliver around the email, calendar and contacts, and therefore it's just purely about a migration piece. So with that in mind, we last year delivered a component which was called staff provisioning, and so that was taking everybody that was an active staff member and moving their identity information into the Azure/Office 365 environment. There was about 12,000 accounts created, and that allowed staff, not that it was promoted, but allowed staff to go into office.com and log in and use the product sets that were there as a starting point to flesh out some of the steps we had to take and so forth. In February this year, we did the equivalent rollout of provisioning for students. So we previously students had been able to log into Office 365, but it was in the public tenancy or domain under Microsoft. And so in February we had to migrate those students into our tenancy, so the Griffith tenancy, and set them all up so that they could log in and use Office 365. So realistically, a little impact at that point. Obviously the next thing is the 2nd of July impact, which is migrating all active staff email boxes, calendar and contacts. And technically that is the only thing we are migrating at that point. So key thing to note, Google not going away anytime soon, right? Because that's one of the common questions we get asked. There'll also be a number of other applications which we'll run through shortly around that will be delivered through T2. They'll predominantly be available as of 2nd of July, but we will not be promoting them at that point. Predominantly because we want to get over the hump of having technical and support issues with mail, calendar and contacts. You'll be able to use them. Technically you can use most of these products now, and we'll show you how a little bit later. Big thing to note in that space, we are still going through some of the governance pieces and some of the configuration pieces, so we're asking not to use Office 365 in a production sense at the moment, as it's not currently supported until the 2nd of July. Right? That's not to say your data will go missing or anything, but the access to it may change slightly, what you can do may change slightly depending on some of those governance and information management components. So during T2 we'll promote a number of the different tool sets and go through, help people understand how they may be used in their day-to-day lives in Griffith. and then also how they may be used in collaboration with some of the students and academics going forward. Then we have the students who will be migrated to their mail calendar, and contacts will be migrated from Gmail into the Griffith tenancy on the 22nd of October, so 1 week before T3. And again, we'll then start rolling out some of the other applications for students that will be available to staff at that point as well. We'll also go through a big re-promotion of the Office 365 to students in T1 2019 for all those new students and so forth, on how they're going to be used and the likes. A couple of other activities we're doing at the same time. We are putting on some tech stations as of the 2nd of July, so there's like your Genius bars or your tech bars that are around the place, likes of Apple and so forth. We will have field service staff manning those for the 2 campuses, Gold Coast and Nathan. Will get 5 days a week in the library, and we've got here Mt Gravatt, South Bank and Logan will get them 3 days a week. Locations I'm still not sure about at those campuses yet, but working through it. They'll be there to answer questions. People who have problems can book in times or drop in and work through any of those issues. We'll still have obviously ITSC and a number of engagements with the project directly. Starting September this year, we'll also be deploying out Windows 10 to all Windows machines. So anybody who has Windows 7, Windows 8 and earlier versions of Windows 10 will get a redeployment up to the latest version, and at that time the new version of Office 365 will also be deployed. Prior to that, it'll be on a need-by-need basis. You can log a job and we can deploy the Office 365 components out to the desktop at that time. It was thought that we would push them out prior to the 2nd of July. We've now had a lot of pushback from staff who have asked for additional time and so forth, or just having it on a need-by-need basis. There are some functions in Office 365, certainly some of the applications, that do not work well with the prior version of Office, so the 2016. So there is functionality that doesn't work. If you come across that, you will need to upgrade to the new desktop versions. Just a quick note on that. We've been asked a number of times what will go onto the desktop and what we supported. So previously until today, I've gone still under discussion. One of the key things has been around Outlook client. Up till now hasn't been supported, even if you wanted to use it with Google. As of yesterday afternoon, it was determined that Outlook would be rolled out onto the desktops and will be supported for those people who want to use a desktop application. So, engagement from the project and obviously from ODS will be around and supporting certainly the ITSC, so any other log jobs that you come in through there, we'll be supporting them. Setting up the tech stations, we will be publishing and putting on our website how-tos and tips and tricks. So some of the cool features, some of the different ways of using the tools and so forth. We'll be running drop-in sessions that will be product specific. So, particular days we're running an Outlook drop-in session or a Excel or a Teams. So, and you'll be able to pick the ones you want to go to and come and learn more about the products and what they can be used for. We'll be doing regular email updates on feedback that we have received and some of the stuff, the regular issues or feedback we're receiving from staff. We have a Office 365 website which is up and running now around some of the things you need to know, things you need to prepare and so forth, which we'll talk about as we go through here. We'll be running lunch and learn sessions where people will be able to come sit in their lunchtime, learn more about the products as a whole, learn more about where we're going to from here with other technology rollouts and also other parts of the MOU. And we will set up a Teams site where you'll be able to ask questions pretty much in live conversation with the team, where you can respond and other people will be able to see those question and answers as we go through. So Teams is one of the new products coming from as part of Office 365, so we will certainly be promoting that as much as possible, and we'll take you through how the product actually works a little bit later in the presentation. So what's actually changing as of the 2nd of July? And that 2nd of July component we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about how we actually will be going through doing the migration. But as of the 2nd of July, Gmail, calendar and contacts will be turned off, so you will not have access to it. You will then have to go into Outlook, calendar and people. That is not to say that the data's gone, that it's not available to us. It's just a way of actually making sure we don't get any orphaned emails occurring in the old system that don't get sent, don't get received and so forth. Right? So if you find for any reason that something didn't come across you were expecting, or you need to get access to that, you'll be able to log a job and we'll be able to migrate that data for you. The other component that will be turned off is Hangouts. So that gets migrated to Skype for Business. Skype for Business is, and I've heard the comment, it's not as good as Hangouts and so forth. There are different components now of Skype for Business that will show you through. There is the IM component, which is pretty close to Hangouts. There is movement in the video conferencing and web-based stuff, and we'll talk about those ones shortly. But it is a different product than just your Skype on a desktop application, right? And we'll work through that. Any questions about what's actually happening on the 2nd of July? Oh, sorry, yep. Wait up, we'll just get you a box speaker to talk into.
Oh, okay. So to do the migration from Google Mail to Outlook Mail,
yep.
You said that we still have access to Google Mail
so
after 2nd of July.
So we being the ODS/ITSC, so you won't be able to log into Google Mail and see it like you do today, but the data is still there. It has not gone anywhere, but we will have to do. So you'll have to log a job, and Griffith IT, ODS, will then migrate that data across for you.
Oh, okay. So for the request basis, that can be done?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And is there any cap? How many emails are allowed to transfer?
We'll talk around the migration and what happens through that very shortly. Predominantly, it's just, so the key answer to that is we're migrating everything that's currently in your email, your calendar and your contacts across completely, right? With some exceptions, but we'll talk about those. Right? But the actual emails themselves all come across. There's no timeline to them.
So I currently use Outlook on my computer.
Yep.
And obviously that's still really Gmail through
Correct.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that go with moving that across? Because I still use my PST file and I don't know how much is that looking for.
Right. So do you have an archived PST file?
No, but I can create.
No, we don't want you to create one. That's one. So the PST file, technically, and it's technically not supported at the moment, but so what you're saying is that you open it and work in Outlook now. All that email should still be in Gmail. So if you go onto the Gmail web client, for example, pretty much you'll see the same structure and so forth. So realistically, nothing changes for you except you'll be having to point at the new Office 365 servers, and that will then start flying again. Right?
So if you happen to be overseas on the 2nd of July, is it worth actually asking to do that earlier?
Can't do it a bit earlier, and we'll talk about why. However, that doesn't mean you won't necessarily have access from. So we'll talk about it and you'll understand shortly.
Will you be sending a communication out about what's being turned off?
Yes.
I'm just concerned about we do have some activities using Hangouts with students
Yep.
for teaching. So in T2, they get turned off access, but students don't. So
Correct.
yeah, just being able to tell those academics beforehand so
Yes.
that they
Yeah.
can do that activity in a different way.
Right. Yep. So it's basically we want to do the campus briefings, and then there's all of staff which will have access to this the presentation, and they'll also, that's why one of the reasons we're capturing it, they'll be able, for anybody who isn't here, will be able to go through and watch the presentation and so forth as well. Any other? So we're good about the timeframes. So one of the major questions we also get asked is, what about the rest of stuff, right? So I want to give you a guideline kind of time frame for stuff that the university is thinking about now. Again, these timelines may change slightly over time and so forth, as you know, all projects do. So around Dropbox, for example, the university currently has, I think, about 500 users out there using Dropbox. There will be a project to migrate Dropbox content to OneDrive starting sometime around September, and the people who are using that will be, involved in part of the migration and so forth and communicated with. It is predominantly OneDrive can pretty much do everything that Dropbox can, and there's obviously a big reasonable cost to the university around Dropbox, so we want to migrate that specifically. The likes of Docs, Drive, Sheets, Slides, Forms, Sites will be, currently the time frame is Q3, Q4 next year for that migration. Got a question? Or? So SharePoint on-premise, G Drive and H drives will be migrated at the same time, around Q3, Q4 2019. One of the questions we get quite regularly from that is, can I just go and migrate all my stuff that's in my drive over to OneDrive when we go live on the 2nd of July? Our current recommendation is not to. There is, again, a whole lot of stuff occurring in the background around retention policies, configuration, and the likes that we are suggesting wait for the project, because it will all happen automatically as part of that migration. We also want to make sure that everything is functioning properly in the O365 space before we do that. And there are a number of features being released by Microsoft during that time that we want to make sure has occurred before we go drastically and move large migrations across. Okay, you will be able to share, send links, send documents, and so forth from one to the other. So there is no issue with that. And anything that you've previously emailed from G Drive that we migrate across that has a link to one of the others in the Gmail world or Google world still function. Okay. The other one is YouTube, not going away anytime soon. There is no comparable product in the Office 365 world, and we'll get on to why. They do have a product that allows you to share videos and so forth, but not the same as YouTube. And there is a product called Vault, which will be staying around, from my understanding, for at least 25 years. And that's, for those who don't know what Vault is, it is a backup utility that Google have for all your documents, all your actions, all your chats and all the rest get historically put into Vault, so that any time you can go back and get that data that you had at that particular time, and there's retention policies around. Most people don't even know it exists, but it will be there from a retention point of view for about 25 years. So Google accounts and so forth and groups aren't going away anytime soon. Cool. The migration. So just to take you through it so you can understand how it's going to function, and then we'll go through what comes across and what doesn't come across and so forth. So roughly, Microsoft are the ones actually doing the migration, and we have done a thorough test on their product that they'll be using. We've tested across large, small, lots of mailboxes and so forth. We know it functions, we know what reports we get out of it, and so it's just one of those, point it at and it starts working kind of thing. So basically at the end of May, we provide Microsoft with a list of active users, and where the endpoint will go into Office 365, so what their end user is, and they roughly about the 4th to the 6th of...
Sorry, how do you classify active users?
So we'll come back to that because I want to talk about that specifically, because it's, again, another common question. So just get back to this. So basically at the beginning of June, they will then kick off what they call a snapshot migration. So they will get everybody's email as of the set date, and they will migrate everything in it, in that mailbox, across to O365. It will take about a 21-day cycle to get everything across, primarily because Google has a limit of 10 gigs a day per mailbox, and we have a number of people who have very large mailboxes. And so basically we get through to about the 20th of June, and that should complete. We'll get a bunch of reports saying what did, what didn't come across. We'll be able to come and talk to any of the users that may have had issues and work through with them about how we resolve those. And then on the 29th of June, at 5 p.m, we switch over all mail routing that used to go to Google, and we point that at Office 365, so all new email will start then flowing into Office 365, and we kick off what we call the Delta migration, which will run over the weekend, and so by Tuesday morning when you come in, Monday morning when you come in, the 2nd, everything should be there and delivered. You should be able to click on the link in the portal that says Office 365 or staff email, and you'll be taken to Office 365 and Outlook, and everything should be there. Now, everything we'll define very shortly. Just to understand, we do get a bunch of reporting about what failed, what didn't fail. There'll be reattempts. There's been a lot of testing involved before we've even come out and said we're going on the 2nd of July. Right? Any questions about the migration? Nope. Cool. Okay, so now we move into the migration. What actually gets migrated? Active staff emails. So the definition for that is if you have an affiliation at all as one of the categories of staff, including sessionals, title holders, and the likes, as you do today, if you can log in with griffith.edu.au account, you are considered an active account, right? An active staff member. That can be visitors who are there that have no technical contract, adjuncts, the likes, right? So it really is around, if you're actively using your Gmail account now, you'll be an active user when you go across. We have some adjuncts who have no email accounts, so obviously they won't be migrated. They'll be able to log on to Office 365, but they won't have an email box. So what we're talking about when we use the term active, though, is we have a number of people, and we've identified some of them, and I'm sure there's more to come, that currently connect to historical user mailboxes. So someone who left a year ago, that they have some commercial value in their mailboxes, and we still use that on a daily basis. Those mailboxes will not come across by default. So if the staff member has left and can no longer log into griffith.edu.au, they will not be migrated. There will be a process, however, to apply for that mailbox content to be moved across. We'll publish that as soon as it's been approved by the project board. That will require, even though you probably if you are one of those users who have one of those mailboxes now, you've probably already gone through approval. You will have to go through an approval process again and justify why it's required and get signed off by your head of school, head of department, right, for that to be migrated across. Now, the one thing to note is it will not come across as that user's email. It'll come across into a shared mailbox that will have an owner who is an active staff member. Just a note on the bracketed bit there, emails under 35 megs. So that's attachments under 35 megs. We know that Google currently has an attachment limit of 25 megs anyway, so that shouldn't really affect anybody. However, we have also seen some circumstances where people have kind of stored larger files in draft but haven't sent them, because technically in some ways you can do that. The attachments will not come across. We're just saying that if anybody's done it, save the attachment off to your drive, it will not be coming across. Right? It won't affect too many people, but we just wanted to highlight it. All shared and service mailboxes will come across. Yes?
Can you just clarify that? If you've got attachments in your mailing,
Yep.
they'll come across as all set under that.
Under 35 megs each, yes. So if you've sent and received attachments before, then they're under 25 meg anyway. It's just some people have been able to add files that haven't been sent and received because otherwise it would have failed, but they've saved them in things like drafts and so forth, right, as a way to store that data in the mailbox. Right? And we're just highlighting, take them out, put them in drafts. Right? Take them out, put them in drive. So all active shared mailboxes and service mailboxes will be brought across. So again, the term on active there is they will have had some activity on them in the last 12 months. Right? So if there is a service mailbox that hasn't had a mail in or out or a person added or removed from, they will not be migrated across. Key thing to note, labels in Google World, which look like folders down the side, but they're technically still labels. They come across and actually in the migration get converted to folders in Outlook World. So if you have an email with 3 labels, you will end up with 3 emails in 3 folders in Outlook World. Okay. It's a key thing to note. So if you can, prior to the end of May, clean up some of those. Like if I know we've already talked to some people who have large scale, have used them more as kind of adding metadata to the actual email themselves. If you can clean those up, it may make your life easier at the other end. The key thing is we've identified 17 users, and that's all that will be problem email boxes. We're talking to them one-on-one to try and help them, clean up some of the mailboxes. But you may get some blowout on the number of emails in your mailbox if you use lots of labels on single emails type thing. We had a situation where one of the service accounts, every email that came in got copied to, and labelled 6 or 7 times, and then again every email that went out got relabelled and so forth. So we saw millions and millions blowout for somebody who had less than 100,000. So it's just things to note. So anybody in the contacts, down the left-hand side you'll have 2 sections. One is My Contacts, so that's all your groups and all the ones you've saved into contacts, and underneath that is Other Contacts. We'll talk about those shortly. The My Contacts, the ones where you've actively made them your contacts or your groups, they all get migrated across. Right. And the same scenario for calendars. My Calendars, the ones you own, will all be migrated across. Secondaries as well, without issue. Anybody who uses the Google Rooms when they're booking meetings and so forth, the rooms will come across, and the content the last 12 months will come across for historical purposes, and only the future 2 weeks will come across. And the primary reason for that is there's a technical difficulty around how Google stores the connection with the original invitee, and when it gets migrated, that connection gets lost. So if we were to bring across all future bookings, if somebody then goes and cancels a booking, as in the original meeting, it won't cancel it out of the meeting room. So what we'll be doing through that period is the project will take ownership of those meeting rooms, and we'll approve any of the meetings that get rebooked in there to make sure the people that had them originally will get the first opportunity to rebook them. Okay. I know it's a bit of a pain, but it's one of those technical difficulties. There is nothing we could do. Right. The things that don't get migrated. As I said before, inactive or historical mailboxes by default will not be. We've already chatted about that. Anybody who has encrypted email or an encrypted attachment. So if you have an attachment you know of that has a password on a zip file or something like that, that is technically encrypted. We suggest downloading it to your drive to store. If you don't know it's encrypted, we will be getting reports on which ones failed. We'll be sending those out post, and you'll be able to identify them, and we'll be able to move them across for you if you require them. Obviously, corrupted items, nothing much we can do about those. Canned messages. Now, they're in the do not come across. Technically not quite correct, but we'll clarify that. The canned messages you have actually appear in Outlook under drafts. All right, so you don't lose the content. However, the function of canned messages is different in Outlook world. It's called message templates, and you'll have to go back in and copy the content back in. That's all. We won't be migrating trash, spam, the Google important label, and the Google categories of promotion, updates, forums, etc. that you see at the bottom of your list on your left-hand side in Google World. They're all labels and so forth that Google create. They stick pretty much every email into them in some way, shape or form. Those emails that are in those labels will also be in one of the other labels, so they'll come across, but they're automatically done, and it would just mean a greater expansion. You would get those mail again and again and again for each of the categories and so forth. So rules and filters, including out of offices and forwards, will not be brought across. It was actually a technical decision made by the project board to ensure that the ones that are in there are correct and should be still happening. We have a number of, including the delegates and so forth, we've taken a look, and there's a lot of stuff in there that should no longer be being forwarded to people that are no longer in the university and so forth. So it's the university has decided it's a good time for those to be reviewed and looked at and re-put in once you get into the Office 365 world. Anybody who will be away during that time frame and will have a current out of office on, we'll work with, we'll be running reports and so forth, and if we need to, we'll stick the out of offices back on for them. If you know somebody in particular, let us know through the email that we show you at the end, but predominantly we'll be running reports and so forth for people that are away during that period. So mail and calendar delegations do not come across. We'd like you to review any that you have on your mailboxes or shared mailboxes you own or calendars you own. Make sure that they're active, and then we'll take you through how to put them back on the other side of when we move across to Office 365. The Google Other calendars don't come across by default. So again, they are somebody else's mailbox, so they'll be brought across for those people. They'll have to then give delegation back again, and you'll have to remap them once they've given you delegation rights. Your signature, again, there is no one-to-one conversion on that, so you'll have to re-enter it. Hangout and chat history does not come across. And your tasks, anybody who uses Google Tasks do not automatically come across. You can email them back to yourself and then they'll come across as the email, but you'll have to go onto Microsoft Tasks and put them back in. And you Google other contacts. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but when you receive or send an email, if you don't save that person as a current contact, Google does for you in your other contacts, so that if you next time you go to them and start typing their name, it'll pop up because it already remembers them, and it pulls it out of the other contacts list. Other contacts aren't going to be migrated. We're suggesting that people go into other contacts, have a look at who they have. You can then migrate them into My Contacts, and then they'll come across. Any questions? Yes?
I just had a question about, I don't know if you said it, is what counts as an active mailbox? I'm just thinking about sessional staff.
Yeah, so basically anybody who currently today has the ability to log on to Griffith, Google, and they're an active staff member, right? So there's a whole bunch of rules around the sessionals and all that kind of stuff. If they can log in normally through using their S number and their password, they're an active member, right? So it's more for those people who have physically left the university and no longer have any affiliation whatsoever, right? And it is really to highlight the fact that a lot of people still use other people's emails because there's commercial information in those email boxes, and they should be dealt with actually differently than what we're currently doing. Right, a bit of comparison about the product sets. Obviously the first 6 are pretty much no-brainers. Most people are using one or both of each of those types, and obviously the Outlook, calendar and people, natural migration. Couple of things around real-time messaging and video conferencing components. Hangout's obviously going to be turned off, and WebEx is going to be turned off once the license expires sometime early next year, and Skype for Business, Teams and Yammer will replace that functionality. One of the key things to note, as of the 2nd of July, the Skype for Business will be able to connect into all video conferencing equipment in the university, and so therefore somebody with Skype will be able to join a meeting even if they're external, which obviously WebEx has not been able to do to this point. And so that functionality will be available as of the 2nd of July. And you'll be able to book those kind of meetings and share the invites directly to external people. Teams have, obviously we'll go through them a little bit later, have functionality for IMing as a group and collaboration. It also has a chat functionality, and you can now do video conferencing directly in Teams itself, which is quite a cool function. And obviously Yammer, anybody using Yammer at the moment will know it's very much an interesting beast in its own right, but it's very much a way for large groups to communicate. It will predominantly become the broader spectrum kind of, I want to send a message to 1,000 people kind of tool, and hopefully Teams will kind of take over the functionality that Yammer is currently doing. Next lot of products, obviously if you use Google Tasks, there will be an Outlook Task or Microsoft Tasks function, which is very similar. They've also added to their product suite anybody who uses Wunderlist on their phone. That has now been purchased by Microsoft and has been added to their O365 suite as well as To Do. It's much more powerful than your current tasks that both Microsoft and Google have. And then there is a collaboration-based or team-based to-do list called Planner. You literally can create to-dos, set them for other people to do, set timeframes, add documents, a whole raft of running like your Trello kind of functionality if anybody uses that to manage tasks that your teams may need to run. Up here it says OneNote is like Keeps, that's where you keep your notes. However, anybody who uses Keeps knows it's more like your sticky notes on your desktop. OneNote is a much more powerful beast than that. It is there to replace your notepad that you have, that you take to meetings and so forth. You can run sections, pages, multiple notepads, You can collaborate with it and so forth. In the storage space, obviously Drive and Dropbox, the equivalent product is OneDrive. And OneDrive is now, OneDrive for Business that we are going to is also back-ended by SharePoint, so there's a lot more functionality that you can actually do in that space going forward. And the content management stuff, which is your sites and your SharePoint on-premise, will at some point next year go to SharePoint Online, which is the newer version, which has a number more features. It also allows you then to utilise the SharePoint functionality across multiple things like your OneDrive, your Teams, and so forth. We then have replacements for Groups and Gmail Plus. We'll go to the likes of Office 365 Groups, pretty much a one-for-one comparison to Groups. Teams and Yammer are your social media type tools. Sorry, we have a question at the back.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, what's the storage of OneDrive?
So you start off at 1 terabyte, however, that is configurable by us. So if you need more, we can just keep giving you more. We have a total unlimited quota, but it has been decided that we'd start with the default, which is 1 terabyte. But if you need that, need more, like we already know that we have one person who is currently storing a whole lot of data in their drive that is about 4 terabytes, so they'll get more as per required. And that is actually legitimately 4 terabytes for some research stuff. So, not some large movies. So forms to forms, so that's pretty much a no-brainer, has pretty much the same functionality. And I've got their YouTube with a star next to it, and I'll talk about star shortly, is equivalent or comparable to Streams. The only thing that's equivalent to it is the fact that Streams is a good way to store video content that you want other people inside the Griffith tenancy to be able to see. And that is about where the comparison ends. YouTube is a totally different beast than that, and the logins will not stop at any point for YouTube, so just to be clear. But it is a good way to share video content that you do not want to be seen external, because externals cannot see stuff in streams. Right? The one note also is that it doesn't do live streaming, so for streams, even though it's called Stream. The other products that are available in the O365 by default, Sway, which is a digital presentation tool. It's for online presentations, newsletters, so forth. It does not have all the features of PowerPoint at the moment, but they are working towards that. But it builds an online presentation that you can share, that you don't actually have to send the content around. Similar to if you were to send a PowerPoint, you send the whole content. And Power BI and Power Apps are two other tool sets. They're actually available, but they will be turned on by request. So Power BI is a data analytics tool that you can put over pretty much any set of data, pull up and manipulate dashboards and so forth. There are 3 different versions of that, so that's, there's a free version which you can manipulate data and build a dashboard for you. And that's the free version. Then there's the one that's the Pro, which has a licensing cost, which means you can do the same thing but share it to others. And then there's the Enterprise version we're also implementing, which means that we can build dashboards and share it to externals. Right? But again, so that's one of the things, there'll be additional licenses for some of those components. And Power Apps is a development tool that allows people to build web and mobile applications that hook into backends inside Griffith, and to put on mobile phones and so forth. So possibly the Griffith app type thing can be built in Power Apps. From mobility point of view, we have a very clear, one-for-one definition of what's available. So obviously there are native applications for all Android and OS phones, including Outlook, obviously the Office suites, Skype and the likes. One thing to note, because a number of people have pointed out that they really like the app that they're currently using. Do they have to switch to Outlook for their mail? The answer is no. If you like the Gmail app or the Apple app, they have a native component that hooks into O365 and you can continue to use it. All you need to do is repoint it to the Office 365 servers, because it's called O365 connector. It's built into most new mail clients or current mail clients on most of the platforms. So if not, you can still connect via IMAP and so forth, and we'll show you how to get to those settings when we get there. Going through quickly, Office training. It's been decided by the university to utilise the Microsoft training. They've spent millions of dollars doing it and probably will do a far better job than we will. And there's also available to us the Microsoft Virtual Academy. The university has access to that, so if you're at Griffith you can log on to that, and it has direct, how do I do this kind of functionality, and it will take you through everything from how to do something in Word to how to do something in the development tools and so forth. As I say, so the training centre you can go to, pick your app. Most of these applications have a 4-hour step-by-step training session, and you can go through that. They also have how to switch from Office 3 to Office 365 from other products, so the Gmail, how things work in Gmail versus how they work in O365, and they go down to what they call cheat sheets, taking you through step-by-step type stuff. I'm going to quickly, with 9 minutes left to go through and show you pretty much how it looks right now. Pretty much, as I said before, anybody can actually go through to Office right now and log in, and I'll take you for a quick how you do it. Obviously we'll be changing links and so forth in the portals going forward, but you pretty much can just do office.com and hit the sign in. Helps if I hit the right button. It'll take you to a box. You put in your normal Griffith, so not your S number. It's one of these technology problems that it keeps switching to extended rather than duplicate. Right, so let me go back a step. Go to office.com and just hit the sign in. You can see now? Yep. So in my case, I am Jonathan James at griffith.edu.au. You'll hit enter and it will take you to the standard single sign-in. Enter your normal details. What is my password? And it will take you through the normal, are you sure? To the basically the good afternoon, good morning, good evening kind of page. It is your stock standard. Your most used applications will be on the dashboard here. You have a similar app launcher in the corner here with the 9 dots. You'll note we're working through and adding some customised ones that will take you to different places. So obviously the My Griffith portal, your Griffith intranet, and in this one some Google Apps as well. So if I click on that, it will take me to Google Drive. So one of the questions we get asked, what happens? Oh, it's awesome because I haven't logged in to that. I'll take you back to this one because I have logged into that one rather than take you through another login session. So obviously most people go and get all the Google apps from Google Mail because it's where we take you right now. Instead you'll be, from the 2nd of July when you click, there'll be a link for Google. It will take you to the Drive, and from the Drive you will have your app launcher with all the ones that will be turned on, obviously, right? So that's how you'll get there, and it'll be available directly from Office 365 as well. Obviously, there are a raft of applications as we talk through. The main one that will be affected from the 2nd of July will be the the Outlook. This is what it looks like. At the moment, we're still trying to work through some of the colouring and configuration type stuff, so if you don't like the red, I don't blame you. We'll work through that around the accessibilities and so forth. So what you'll see up the top is your favourites. Down the next one will be, and predominantly any mailboxes you attach will be named downsides, just like my default one is, but if you have a shared one, it will appear underneath your name, and you'll have all your folders that come across, and predominantly most of mine come across into important information. Take, for example, if I'm currently wanting to work out of my favourites and I want to move, say, the help desk one to my favourites, I just hit on the star, or you can right click and go add to favourites, and you'll see that appear up the top. If you want to share your mailbox, you can right click and go permissions, and then sometime soon, you'll get to the permissions page. You'll be able to add somebody new. Can't spell. And you'll also be able to give them different levels of rights, from owner rights, which doesn't mean they can take you off because you'll be the default owner, through to contributor, and each one of those ticks and turns on different components under your mailbox, whether or not they're allowed to create new items and so forth. So a lot lower level of configuration. You can also decide you only want to share them your inbox, for example, and not your whole mailbox. So you can do it at any folder level going underneath and share that and give them the different levels of rights. Key thing to note in the new, when you're creating a new, sorry, my battery has just for some reason decided not to work, which is why it's gone into, sorry about this. Hopefully we'll run through. So, most people know how to send emails. Keynote in the Outlook world is if you are wanting to add somebody or highlight something in the email itself, if you put at the person, it will put that, they will get a notification that they've been added to this email because it's actually in the content, so when you hit send, and they'll be added to the to list, right? So if you're running through and you're thinking, I need X, Y, and Z to do something, I can add them just by doing at, and then they appear. Down the bottom, key thing, attachments, obviously from the local computer or cloud, and we'll show you where you can add different cloud storage options for that, so that you don't have to go searching and download all the different applications to have them available on the computer. The other key thing here is the message templates. So down, let me kill that again, no, it's pretty hard to see. Down the side is a little thing there. Click on it and you can just add your message template. You can have a whole message or just staged paragraphs, right? And then just add them in. Take, for example, so normal content, want to go to lunch or whatever, and just add them in as you go through. So that's key differences there. Skype, so if you're doing your IM on your Hangout, there's a button here which is similar, and you can add a new conversation and they'll come up and you get the whole directory list as per before, and once you've added all the particular people you want, you then just hit the plus and then go through and do your IMing like normal. All of those come across, so all that history comes across into a folder in Outlook called Conversation History. You will get notifications up here about if you've put time limits and stuff on your flags, they'll all come up into the notification stage. And the key one that people will want to go into quite a bit, I would suspect, is the settings. You can either come here and search for specific things like forwarding, and click on it, or you can go down the bottom and you will get multiple ones, and the easy one is to click on that. There is a raft of settings all under the one section that you can go through, including your inbox, and they have one called sweep rules. So if you want to clean up certain things, you can build rules that delete or archive off or remove out of folders and so forth. Lots of different functionality in your rules. You can there are a raft of how I deal with reads and functionality that probably is a bit more lower level than you would have seen in the Google space. If you want to do your forwarding, for example, that's there. If you want to find out what your POP or your IMAP functionalities are, that's in there as well. There is no separate password. The O365 connector will use your standard S number password functionality. What else is in here that sort of interests? Your signatures down there, you add it in as per previously, and if you want to find out what storage, to add your storage, we've just disabled the functionality at the moment until we've set the list that we want to allow, but there'll be a plus sign in there. You can add your Dropbox and your so forth too. And if you want to do a cleanup on your mail, you'll be able to see how much is in what, and you can then go and do separate items, which is delete after. You can set whole retentions on different folders and so forth. So, I won't delete that. That would be terrible. So a lot of functionality in there. It's email. Most people know how to do it. As you can see, all my stuff has come across. I'm one of the testers that I'll moan the most, I'm sure. So a lot of functionality. We'll have all the to-dos and how it will happen. Now I know we are out of time. There is some other stuff to see if anybody wants to see it, or if anybody's got any questions first and foremost. Yes.
Just a couple of questions.
Yep.
The resources, the rooms that we have access to currently,
Yep.
will they remain the same?
The names of them may change slightly. They should stay the same though, but the names are going into a convention so that they'll be standardised.
So if we have access to certain rooms now, we'll maintain that same access automatically? Okay.
Yes.
Corporate mailboxes, will they be reshared? The delegations of that be sorted, or they'll automatically be done?
Yes.
So it's only staff member ones that need to be.
Yes.
Will draft emails come over?
Correct. Yes.
They will come over into the draft folder.
Yep.
And how do staff activate Power BI if they want that app?
Through software services.
Okay.
Just the same way you would order anything else that will be in the catalogue.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Cool. Sorry, there was.
Thanks. So we can go into that space now and look around, but that nothing will be transferred across until the 2nd, is that right? So
Yes, so just to note that there will be some changes occurring between now and the 2nd around configuration and so forth. Data shouldn't be lost. I say shouldn't, touch wood. But, predominantly go and have a play, start playing with it.
Okay, and if you're accessing via laptops, iPads or phones, is that going to be an automatic move across as well?
As far as?
In terms of these, like if you're working off of usually an iPad.
Yep.
So this will just all automatically go across as well, just like normal?
So I'm trying to work out what.
So on your iPad, it's just got that automatic app that says Mail. If you've already set it up to connect to Google, will they have to reconnect to that one?
Yes, so there will be a configuration we'll send out to tell you how to add an account.
Right.
And that account you'll then have to add O365, go through and authenticate.
Okay, good. And the IMAP password you're saying will now just be?
Just your normal one.
Normal password.
Yeah, but if you're using, say, Apple Mail, you won't be setting it up as an IMAP. There is actually Office 365 connector in Apple. So you just, it'll say, what type of mail you normally go Office 365. It will then just go and set it up for you.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Cool.
You said you'd come back to if we're going to be overseas on the 2nd
yes.
of July.
Yes, sorry, you're right. So if you are, get back there, somewhere down here. If you could email us and just let us know. Oh, great. How about that? Technology. Rushing through stuff. Where am I? There. So if you can, even if you just do Office 365, it'll come up in the directory. If you can email us and let us know when you're going across and back, and who will, if you will have a delegate on your email box that we need to reshare the new one to, we can set that up for you while you're away.
So it should just still happen if I want to still access my emails overseas. Yes. It should still be fine.
Yes, correct. So one of the things to point out, on the weekend of the 29th through to the 2nd July, if you're still wanting to get your emails over that weekend, obviously it will be the time of doing the transfer, all new emails will go to Office 365 and you'll be able to go into Office 365 and check it via the Outlook web app. All historical stuff will still be in Google, so we'll still be able to be getting into both through that weekend for those people who will be active. It's just as of the 2nd we'll be turning off the Gmail access.
But if I don't need to delegate it, it's just I need the access.
Yep.
I don't need to email you.
No, correct. It's only if you want specifically for us to put on your out of office while you're out of office. Yeah.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Yes.
So just one more clarification for historical mail. So if someone has last 10 years worth of email, do we need to...
Are they in your email box?
No.
So, sorry, I just want to clarify. So when you say somebody's got 10 years worth of email,
Yes.
is that 10 years worth of email in your mailbox or in somebody else's mailbox?
Somebody else's mailbox.
You will be sending out a notification of a process that you'll need to go through to get it approved to be migrated across into a new shared mailbox, which you will probably become the owner if you're trying to get into it. So it's somebody else's mail,
Yes.
right? You'll have to get approval to have that brought across, and it'll have to be signed off by your head of school or head of department.
Oh, okay. So that's someone else's email
Correct.
that has 10 years worth of email that are automatically migrating to his account.
Are they active people?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Active people.
So if they're active people, everything is coming across.
Okay, yeah. What I wanted to clarify was whether we need to delete or clean up or anything like that.
No, not unless they feel that they want to, because they're going to end up with too many emails on the other side because of labels kind of thing. There's no requirement to shrink your email. As I said earlier, there are only 17 people who are over the migration limits at the moment, and we're working with them directly to see how we can get their data across through the migration.
Okay, great.
Sorry, yep.
Just with the OneDrive,
Yep.
at the moment, you can't, the share with anyone link is off. I'm guessing when
Correct.
government comes in on July 2nd, that will
So
feature
so that is going through for approval right now through the IM management side of things. It will be turned on, I can tell you. Yeah. So it just they haven't got to that point of signing that off. There's about 20,000 different settings that we're going through one by one, just making sure they're right so that we don't open ourselves to the world kind of thing. So, any other questions? Yep.
What about email, but with cloud storage?
Yep.
How's the confidentiality work?
So pretty much, first off, everything in O365 world is stored in local Australian data centres, which is actually different from Google. Google's been pretty much can be stored anywhere around the world. They are in Microsoft data centres in Sydney and Melbourne, with the exception at the moment of chats in Teams. So if you chat in Teams as an individual, it's currently stored in Singapore under similar data retention and legislation as well that we have here. It is migrating through, so quite often they start stuff in the States and then migrate it through as it becomes available in different countries. There are confidentiality agreements that we all have to enter into, so Microsoft have to as well. Is there a possibility of breach? Yes, like anything. Anything's possibly hackable. Microsoft is Microsoft and Google are one of the two companies that haven't been breached, unlike a lot of other cloud storage places. But technically, you're in no more risk, probably less risk in fact, having it in a Microsoft data center or a Google data center as you would be having it in local storage here, with the fact that most of our stuff here is available to externals or to students who could hack it anyway. But as far as data confidentiality, we own that data, Microsoft do not, and they're covered by very tight Australian laws on what they can and can't access. Does that answer your question?
So we have a large database with access database.
Right. Yep.
So how will we manage that? And it's a highly confidential database.
Right. So at this moment in time, I'd say you don't move it anywhere. When the storage project comes through next year, you would approach them and talk to them specifically about that. I would be saying if it's that confidential and the likes, you should be moving it off access anyway, because it's not the most secure of databases that you would find, and there are probably better ways to store it locally, but in an Oracle or an SQL database that has full directory type level security. Sorry, yeah.
With the staff and students, are they going to be under the same domain?
So
when you do the sharing, Google at the moment, you have to share to
yes,
everyone to
you do.
students.
So there's different terminologies around the world. Domain pretty much is after the @ if you're talking about in an email sense, right, your domain is, and students will stay griffithuni.edu.au and staff will be griffith.edu.au. However, both of those domains will be under the Griffith tenancy, and therefore you can share things directly with students. They will be able to get into Teams directly with their normal, SSO login and stuff. They are technically in our same.
So when you do share for people at Griffith,
yep.
that includes them now?
So currently still going through the security around whether you'll see all students and all alumni and all that kind of stuff, or if you know who they are, you'll be able to type their name and just share it with them directly, yes. So it'll all depend on what you see. So at the moment I can tell you we have even though both parties, students and staff, are in the same tenancy, and as an admin I can go in and see all of them. But if you were to just go, I'm just trying to think, actually I have a student account at the moment.
It's more about when you share a form or a document.
Yep. So it will all depend on what's been made available to that particular app as far as, will you be able to see every student to share it to? Probably not, right? But you'll be able to add their email address in and it will be able to share to them directly, yes.
It's more about when you choose share this form with anyone at Griffith, which means anyone at Griffith can use it.
Correct.
They will be
part of that. Anyone, yes. And therefore it needs to be thought about around how you share things as well. Right. Okay. Any other questions? I have a couple of quick videos around some of the other products. There is a OneNote, OneDrive, Teams, which is probably the preferred one I'd like to show if anybody's interested in
Welcome
seeing.
to Microsoft Teams. Welcome to Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is a new collaboration app that helps your team stay organized and have focused conversations all in one place. Let's take a look around. Here you can see a list of all your teams. Your team conversations are called channels and can be organized however you like, by topic, department, project, or even just for fun. Channels are open to everyone on a team, so anyone can drop in and see what everyone's talking about. The tabs at the top of each channel allow you and your teammates to keep your files, notes, apps, and websites where everyone can reach them. If you need to meet really quickly, there's a video button below your compose box that will let you start an impromptu meeting right then and there. Since the meeting's happening in a channel, anyone can join in. Want to chat one-on-one or with a smaller group? No problem. Just click chat and you'll see a list of all your private conversations. Quickly start a new chat here, or click on someone's name to continue an existing conversation. If you want to call people from a chat, you can do that right here. Click on Activity to catch up on all your likes, @mentions, replies to your messages, and more. Staying on top of your schedule is easy. Just click on Meetings to see everything you've got on your schedule for the day. If you click on Files, you get easy access to all the files belonging to your personal OneDrive for Business account and your team's SharePoint. It's always nice to introduce some fun into your workday. Here's where you can find your favorite emoji. Here's where you can search for the latest GIFs. And here's where to find stickers and memes that you can actually edit. Because Microsoft Teams works the way you work, you can take your conversations from your desktop and continue them on your mobile device, so you're always up to date. Thanks for taking the tour. Now bring it.
Right, so Teams certainly is one of the key apps that the academics are looking at. For those who are already using Yammer and so forth, pretty much provides that whole functionality in Teams, plus much more. From an example of that, and it's one of the things that people seem to be, you can tell I don't use it too much. There is a desktop version, there's also a web version, but one of the functionalities is that you can hook in all your websites that you want, for example, a student or a team to have. A new team member can come in and see all of the communication and things that have happened prior to them. Take, for example, under the project ourselves, we have obviously a general comms change, student provisioning component, so we can have different conversations with different people, and you can go back through the history of those conversations. You can also, each one of these channels gets their own file structure, where you can share documents specific to those particular channels, and you can add links and build your own team OneNote for notes and so forth to go into. You can also add a number of any applications, and this is growing on a weekly basis. So there is currently Blackboard is working with Microsoft to add an add-in here that will take you off the Blackboard and components. So anybody using Asana can do a link into here, for example, or whatever. And it is a very powerful tool for collaboration as a whole. Right? Obviously, one of the other functionalities coming across is the OneNote. How many people here have used OneNote? This is one that's from the project. It is probably the second most powerful tool, so I'll run through and show you that and see what you can do. Is that playing? Yep. Should be playing.
Is your very own digital notebook. Whether you have a million ideas, a million things to do, or a million things to remember, OneNote is the perfect app for capturing pretty much everything. Type notes or record audio at your desktop. Sketch or write ideas on a tablet. Or add a picture from your phone. And because all your notes are in the cloud, OneNote lets you switch devices and pick up where you left off. And once you've captured everything with OneNote, you can organize it however you want. Freely move notes around the page, organize those pages into sections, and keep your sections in one or more notebooks. OneNote can capture it all and help you find it instantly later. OneNote is as structured or as unstructured as you want it to be. You can even share your notebooks with others, so you can all view and contribute at the same time, turning a few isolated notes into a resounding symphony. Learn how to use OneNote to capture, organize, and share everything that matters to you.
One of the